What's up again, everybody? Today we're going to talk about a topic that I've had on my to-do list for a video for a couple of weeks. And I've talked about it a few times and sort of in a smaller capacity, but I think that it deserves its own video. And I've seen some people talking about it recently, so I thought this might be a good time for it. So today we're going to talk about this living legend system and what has occurred over the past year with this system and how it's going to have to, or perhaps not have to, evolve over time. And this is going to be an interesting back and forth, so feel free to leave your comments down below on how you feel like this system is functioning like currently and how you think it's going to function going forward. But before we start really talking about it, I want to give you a bit of a story. This goes back to Pro Tour New Jersey, the very first Pro Tour. The very first Pro Tour, I sat at a table with a couple of people. I won't give any names just because I didn't ask if I could mention them, so I'm just going to not. But a couple of them worked at LSS, and one of them brought up this topic. They mentioned, it's going to be interesting, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me if this is not an exact quote. It's going to be interesting to see the player base's reaction to the building point totals and the rapid increase in point totals now that major events are firing, as far as Living Legend is concerned. Meaning that because they had planned for large-scale events, but those large-scale events couldn't fire because COVID got in the way during like 2021 to some degree, and of course, obviously in 2020, the amount of Living Legend points that would have organically built over time would have led to an eventuality where these heroes, in some way, shape, or form, would have Living Legended over the course of, that year or two leading up to that point. So things would have played out differently. Okay, that's what they were getting at. And then the idea being that, like, now that large-scale events are firing worldwide and more events are coming on board and online, that these heroes are going to start accruing points faster. And this leads me to the topic today. And that topic is this. There are a lot of opportunities for Living Legend points to be earned by heroes, and the question is, are there too many points available to heroes that can be snatched up by perhaps a perceived best deck, even for example if that deck isn't the best? Are there too many points still to be snatched up if the meta just devolves into a best deck? That's the interesting question, and we could possibly see it play out in front of us, and we might have already seen that start to play out with Briar, okay? Because Briar, after the rotation, or I guess leading up to the rotation of Prism, the Briar started to just become this dominant deck within the overall meta, and overall aggro scene was kind of taken over by Briar. And in doing so, Briar earned a bunch of Living Legend points and now sits upon the precipice of Living Legend herself. And this happened over the course of, well, technically a year, because, Tales of Aria came out last year, and Tariq Patel piloted the deck to a win at U.S. Nationals, right? Piloted the deck to a win at the U.S. Nationals, earning a bunch of points, and then a lot of people followed suit, picking up wins in callings and, large-scale tournaments. Like, for example, we saw the win at, I believe it was Pro Tour, right? Pro Tour Lille was won by Briar, of course, because Briar was the literal top four of Pro Tour Lille. And because of those points and all of the other points, Briar is now within this calendar year, pushing towards a Living Legend status. And the question that a lot of people in the community are asking, is that too quick? Is 1 year of rotation too quick? Now, of course, you can always go back to Bravo, star of the show, and say, well, you look at Bravo, it basically speed ran. That's how you say that in past tense. Basically speed ran the Living Legend system. But as far as like a hero like a Briar, or for example, let's just kind of bring up like a Fi, even though Fi has clearly fallen off, but if Fi remained as powerful as it was with Stubby Hammerers and just started racking up wins across the board, is 1 year or a little less than 1 year too short of a time for a hero to be in the meta? That's a question that I think is a bit more nuanced than just saying yes or no. But if you want to say yes or no, leave a comment down below and let me know what you personally think. I think this all comes down to, as far as how the system functions right now, I think it all comes down to how this is structured. And it's interesting because if you look at what Legend Story Studios has done over the past year, they have started to tweak the numbers because of rising amounts of events that are firing. This reflects the growth in the number of events in the series and the number of events that have taken place this season. So they lowered the amount of ProQuest points that are given out simply because there are more events. And the same question should be asked of national championships, because the national championship season is approaching and there will be 39 national championships run. 39 events with points on the line across the world. And that's a lot of points. And if they get gobbled up, let's just talk about the meta really quick. And I'm not going to pull up a tier list or anything like that yet, unless you want me to. Leave a comment down below. I'll do a tier list, even though I feel like it's, I don't know. Maybe it's not necessary. Oldhim is quite popular and performing quite well. I mean, if you look at the top 8 of the Battle-Hardened Columbus, Oldhim has performed quite well thus far. Same with Dromai, same with Icelander, technically to some degree. Controlled Dash is in there as well. Aggro right now is being pushed down simply because of the surge of control, and people are going to tweak aggro decks, and of course that'll find a way to balance itself out, perhaps. And technically, some of these Oldhim lists are not actually like controlled'em, which is what I'm calling that. I am straight up going to use the word controlled'em. They are more of like mid-range pummel decks, and I think that is one of the best ways to play both Bravo and Oldhim. That is a complete aside. But let's assume Oldhim, Grandfather of Eternity, is one of the best decks in the format. Let's just say he's S tier. If that's the case, let's just play hypothetical time. If there are 39 events, let's just lowball it, say, I don't know, what's half of 39? 14? No, half of 39. 39 divided by 2 is 19 and a half. Okay, so what if Oldhim wins 15 events? Okay, let's just say they win 15 events. And let's say they win 15 events that are all worth 40 points. Now, that is a bit high. That's a bit high, but let's just assume that maybe this is the best deck in the format and people are just going to figure it out. If that's the case, then Oldhim gets 600 points. 600 points in one Nationals season. And that's not even considering, like US Nats or obviously the low rolls of, like him picking up 20 points instead in like sub 48 player tournaments. If he gets 600 points, he's all of a sudden sitting at 818 points. And again, is basically looking like Briar is. Now, I am distilling everything down, and I am very much generalizing a meta which could not technically exist currently. And Bravo and Dash and Dromai and Icelander and all these other heroes have a lot to say about how the meta is going to shape. And great players do too. But if that were the case, my question to you is that too fast for one hero to grow? And I would argue that perhaps it is. But there are maybe one or two other questions you have to ask yourself with this system. I think that are valid to ask with this system. And here's the first one. How many heroes is enough heroes to maintain balance and variety? That's the question. So think about this. How many heroes do you actually want in the meta to maintain both variety and balance in the meta? Because right now we're sitting at 16 heroes available to you in the meta, 15 if you don't count Azalea, 14 if you don't count Levia, and then of course 13 if you don't count Sir Bolton, sadly. But I do think it is important to count those heroes because I think there is always going to be a wonderful spot for dark horses and underdogs in a meta. But the question becomes, how many heroes is enough to maintain variety and to maintain a balance? I guess the question becomes, how many is too little to maintain variety, or you get the same thing over and over again? How many is too much to maintain balance. Like if you have too many heroes, you can't find a balance therein. And does it do it by itself? Is the meta organic enough that it can kind of self-correct, course correct? And that comes from good hero design, I believe. The second question, and this one's very interesting: how many heroes are you going to expect to living legend within a calendar year versus how many are you going to introduce? That's a question we should all look at, because in this scenario, let's just again assume that something like an Oldhim, gains a bunch of points, picks up a bunch of points in these competitive events, and ends up reaching very close to, if not just living legending out, within the rest of this year, maybe even like at the end of Worlds. Like, let's just say that. Let's say another hero living legends out. How many heroes have living legended this season or this year? Well, Prism, technically Chain, I guess technically Bravo. So if you're counting Bravo, Chain, Prism, possibly Briar, possibly another hero. Not Viserai, of course, but maybe Viserai. I don't know. Let's just use that for an example. That's 5 heroes. Now, the next question is, how many heroes do you introduce in that calendar year? Well, technically, they've introduced Bravo this year in Everfest. Okay, they introduced 3 new heroes in Fi and Dromai and Icelander. Where's Icelander? So they've introduced 3 there, and then, so they've introduced 4 so far, and then we have to ask if there are any Bravo-esque heroes in this supplemental set, because if there are, well, then we have 5 introduced to the meta. So the question becomes this, and this is what I want to kind of like finish this with. If we have 5 heroes rotate out and 5 heroes move in, does the system still function with these numbers? And I know there's a lot of people right now that are really kind of harping on the Living Legends system, and perhaps rightfully so, because of the way the numbers are working and because of the way the heroes are moving very quickly. And you are very much entitled to your opinion if you don't like the heroes rotate so fast. And honestly, I actually don't like that heroes rotate so fast, but that's simply because I like playing a lot of different heroes. And, if I'm playing these heroes down here and this one goes, then I didn't really feel like I got my chance to sink my teeth into said hero. That being said, if the system is pumping in as many heroes as it's pumping out, I guess I would highlight that the other way around. Like, if you're getting as many heroes about as you're losing within a calendar year, is that system functional to maintain those things that we talked about earlier? Enough of a variety of hero and enough of a reined-in meta that you can maintain balance from set to set. And that's the really interesting thing. So for me, I think the system has enough flexibility built in by them just tweaking numbers based on the amount of events, while also evaluating how many are rotating and how many you're bringing in. Because it would be bad if you had like a 35 hero meta and like 5 of them are like S tier and everything else is like way down because it's not balanced, right? That would be an unfun meta in and of itself. Or would it? I don't know. Let me know what you think in a comment below. I think the same thing can be said and can be viewed here in Blitz, and I think the Blitz meta is one that's under discussed. But the amount of Blitz events that gain points, like skirmishes, battle hardens, those types of things, are further down. There's a way less of them comparatively. And so for this, I feel like it's almost easier to just add a bunch of heroes and let them kind of LL whenever, versus something that you're considering your top tier, event. And this is the one that you're really wanting to try and curate. Whereas this, you can introduce a bunch of these fun like side heroes like Kaio and technically Dorinthia and Genus and all that sort of stuff. So there's some interesting parallels to the Blitz that I won't go into because I want to keep this to a point. But the idea that the Living Legend system is completely broken, to me, is not quite accurate, but it is flexible enough that can be tweaked. Is it perfect? I don't think so, and I do think that these numbers will probably have to be tweaked yet again, as they already have been. But I think that is a nice thing to see, that these numbers are not set in stone, and that the weights of some of these events are perhaps not set in stone, because they did shift this down and give it less points per, because those events are firing more. So it's an interesting topic, and one that I would love to hear other people's opinions on and have conversations about, because it's one of those things where the game is definitely accelerating because more people are playing it and more events are firing. So are there going to be big changes to this system to prevent Living Legend from happening so quickly? Or are they just going to kind of keep it as is and have some heroes rotate and then just fire off the Living Legend format and then just let you just jump in with Living Legend format and then have your other heroes in Classic Constructed? That'll be an interesting thing to see. If you enjoyed this conversation about the Living Legend system, let me know in a comment below. Make this number go to a slightly higher number, and then give a thumbs up because my AC works. It's a Christmas miracle. I was so blessed and thankful to have AC, because yesterday I did not have AC. As always, thanks for watching.